We're just concerned because now the water is coming in.
You don't know where to go until you know where the hurricane's going to be, and by the time you know where the hurricane's going to be, it's too late to go anywhere.
He said, I want my house back. Started crying.
You know, there's destruction and there's a lot of loss. But one of the great things I've seen is buildings, they break down, but people don't.
And most of the time I found out that people really don't need you to say anything. They just need you to listen as they tell their story.
Hi, I'm Eva Aguirre Cooper. Welcome to our special coverage after the storms, West Michigan responds. We're here in southern Florida after a devastating hurricane season.
Hurricane Harvey intensifying rapidly.
Harvey's rains keep coming.
Irma's now threatening to obliterate the Florida Keys.
If you've been ordered to evacuate, you need to leave now.
3 different tropical systems that we're watching.
Hurricane Maria's ravaged the island.
We've been seeing overturned cars and collapsed buildings.
Hurricane Nate made 2 landfalls.
You can see the power of Mother Nature behind me.
One of the most devastating hurricane seasons ever.
Help was needed, and West Michigan volunteers answered the call. We drove for miles and miles along the Florida Keys and saw devastation everywhere. These huge mounds of debris here represent lost homes. When we come back, we'll meet some volunteers who are working to rebuild homes and lives. We're on Big Pine Key, just north of Key West, where we discovered a settlement of sorts, a home away from home for Red Cross volunteers.
We were in Hurricane Harvey. Before Harvey arrived, we were in Victoria, Texas, in a FEMA evacuation dome. So we were literally there when the hurricane came ashore and looked out our doors and watched it go by. So we were home for 2 weeks, then they asked us to come to Hurricane Irma, which is where we're at now. And we've been here ever since.
Tom Westgate gave us a first-hand tour of the Red Cross base camp he now calls home. This is the volunteer camp.
This is the camp. There's offices here. This is our staffing office. This is real helpful, especially for the new people. Mass Care Avenue, Recovery Row, Logistics Lane, Mess Hall Alley.
It's like a little mini city.
This is a little city, big motel.
This is the first International Red Cross base camp ever built in the United States.
We are from the Danish Red Cross. Normally we would go to basically any natural disaster, put up the base camp. It was set up in Philippines and it was set up in Haiti. Also in Sudan. The base camp has different sizes. It carries normally what you can see here, tents for accommodation, officers which is fully equipped, and also normally have a kitchen, including generators, lightings, basically everything you need to set up a camp.
Mary and I went there a little over a week ago, and they said you're in 0505. That's my tent. Then I went in there, there's a 05 tent, 05 tent within the tent. That's my little cubicle, if you will.
Okay. So this is yours?
This is Mary and I's home. Mary and I's is the second and third one on the right. And there's, I don't know, these are about maybe 7 or 8 feet. So we have a cot in there. We've got a little laundry basket, and we've got a little stand where you can put stuff on, and a fan. What you hear when you're sleeping all night, zip, zip. There's zippers on everything.
The tents.
So all night long, you might hear a little snoring, but the zip, zzz, zzz, zzz. And every time we go in and out, we got to zip and unzip.
Oh, yeah.
Keep the bugs out, keep the rain out. This is where you want to shave. The water is one temperature, but hey, disaster, you got to live with that. This is a shower unit. Yeah, there's an adjustment right here. You get hot water or cold water.
A little nicer than the Porta-Johns?
These are much nicer than the Porta-Johns. This is our, I don't know what they officially call this. I call it the mess tent because I was in the service, but this is our, where we do have some meetings in here, and you can see we have a refrigerator with cold food and water, and we have plenty of snacks here. They'll bring in food for the crew. For example, breakfast would be eggs and sausage and biscuits, maybe for 60, 70 people. They set it up here and we sit down, relax. They even have a TV back there that works sometimes. As volunteers, at least in my wife and I's case, we don't have time to read a newspaper or watch the news. When you get finished with your work day, take a shower, and maybe get something to eat if you have some time and feel like it, and sack out and get ready for the next day.
After the break, we'll take you to one of the communities that sustained major damage from Hurricane Irma. Irma hit the Keys as a Category 4 hurricane. Entire communities were devastated. People lost their homes, their cars, and their livelihood. We traveled for miles and miles and saw destruction everywhere. Boats washed on shore, buildings collapsed, and massive piles of debris just waiting to be cleaned up. Many of the iconic palm trees toppled or left with no leaves. There was a funky, almost rotten smell present on all of the islands. Residents told us that was a distinct odor from the aftermath of a tropical storm. The hurricane stink. One of the islands that struck us the most was Cudjoe Key, just 20 miles northeast of Key West. It suffered a direct hit. We went to a neighborhood that the eye of the storm passed straight over, Hurricane Irma's ground zero.
There's a lot of heartbreak here. Not this house, the next one over from the road, it looks okay, but from the ocean, it's gone, you know.
When Irma came through, she blasted us. This is my home for the last 5 years. And it's still beautiful. It's just gonna take a lot of time, a lot of work. We have water coming in the top, so all the living room, dining room is mold. We've been working on trying to get that fixed. So FEMA came out today and put a tarp over the roof for us because we have holes in it. And our next project is getting this house off of ours so we can stop the water from going in my kitchen. But that's kind of where we're at. We've had 5 piles out here. Deep freeze, refrigerator, everything in our storage unit had to be trashed. So, I mean, it's almost like, you know, you got to start over.
Some residents fared better than others. In some instances, we could see a home completely destroyed, but a neighboring home was still standing tall.
As you can see, we fared pretty good compared. There's so many people that lost everything.
Irma kind of wiped out. I got pretty fortunate, but a lot of people got tore down, and right now we're just putting it back together. It got hit. Yeah, my friends are totally destroyed across the street on either side. So
we've lost both of our porches, and almost all the shingles off the roof. And we had our brother-in-law and a friend of ours come down and put a tarp over it just a couple days after the storm. We had some water damage inside, and the painter just left. He just took care of that. So we're just doing some final cleanup.
But not everyone can afford to rebuild, and most face lengthy battles with their insurance providers before they'll ever see any money.
Financially, a lot of us can't afford to replace it, and that part's sad.
It's hard to get insurance to pay for hurricane damage, and water damage, you don't always get coverage for that. So, and oftentimes people can't afford it. So they end up losing everything and it's gone.
These residents aren't alone. A tremendous outpouring of help and aid has been provided by the Red Cross and other organizations.
The Red Cross has been by, FEMA has been by. We've had a lot of help. People come down and offer to cover roofs for free, and food wagon comes around every day. It's been awesome.
The Red Cross is just absolutely super. They've helped a lot of people here.
Done a fantastic job, really taking care of people that needed it badly.
When disasters happen, we all feel compelled to do something. These volunteers answered the call. We'll have more for you after the break. While all these volunteers want to help others, for many, what they received in return was just as rewarding.
Well, I started in Miami. I was at one of our shelters for the first 2 weeks doing spiritual care. There are about over 800 people.
We met Father Robert from Muskegon, who was a first-time volunteer for Hurricane Harvey in Texas, who was then sent to Florida.
I did that for 2 weeks, and that was an eye-opener, but nothing like when I came down to the Florida Keys. It was a war zone. You know, it's been a war zone down here. I had no clue. You know, and you can take all the classes you want.
Yes.
And when you go back and I'll show people all the pictures that I've taken, but that doesn't describe the temperature, the smell, the sound, the sweat. I mean, you show somebody a picture and say, well, yeah, that's what it was, and it's brutal, and what these people have had to go through.
Yeah.
Well, see, in disaster spiritual care, one of the things that's important to do is that you have to remember that initially, people's spirits are broken, and so we try to work with them. We try to walk with them on their journey, saying, okay, here's what the Red Cross can do, and the case managers and the nursing staff and everybody, all pitches in to see where we can get these people.
They come through line after line after line, car after car after car, asking what we have. We have nothing. Our house is gone. What can you give us? Well, how can you help us? Can you give us food? Can you give us a toothbrush? What can you give us?
Some of these folks, they want to get it out. They want to talk. And so we listen as much as we can. I know we're real busy, but we still have to take the time to listen. They'll show you a picture on their phone where their house used to be. And I had a gentleman, he said, I want my house back. Start crying. That's tough for us.
But just walking around every day for 12 hours, at least 12, 14 hours a day, listening to hundreds of people tell their story. And then you try to help them ease the pain somehow. And most of the time I found out that people really don't need you to say anything. They just need you to listen as they tell their story. And that in itself is part of the healing process, I think, for them. And just my own personal growth and spiritual growth as a person has leaps and bounds, because you're really pushed to what you thought was your limit. There aren't any limits. There are no limits.
One of the volunteers who has seen the resiliency of those hit by the hurricanes, I actually met in Grand Rapids when I took the Zero to Hero disaster training.
There's destruction and there's a lot of loss. But one of the great things I've seen is buildings, homes, they break down, but people don't. The human spirit is so strong down here. There's so much resiliency, and people know that they're going to get through it, and that's really enheartening to see.
And they are just absolutely so appreciative when they see, a red vest going through the mud and debris to get to them, to get to their house, to offer them something. It's a moving experience.
After the break, we'll find out why these volunteers are willing to leave their homes and families in support of the relief effort. After Irma, the Florida Keys still face a long road to recovery. The islands are open and tourists are starting to trickle back in, but it could be several months before many residents and businesses are able to rebuild.
Recovery takes a long time. Recovery doesn't happen in 2 weeks, or 4 weeks, or even 6 weeks. Recovery is often measured in months and years.
The news cycle, as you would know, just moves on to what the next disaster is. The need is still here. We're still seeing hundreds of people a day coming to our disaster recovery center.
When you see the devastation that Irma has wrought, you know that's not going to be a quick and easy fix.
In times of disaster, the American Red Cross is one of the first groups to arrive on the scene. They offer aid by providing meals, counseling, cleanup, and just simply being there for people who need to be heard.
We're here in order to provide some disaster relief in the form of casework and also in the form of some minimal individual financial assistance. The biggest thing about casework is that it's an individual person, to talk to a person face to face, to hear their story, to understand their needs, and to help them begin to navigate through a very difficult and very emotional process. We're providing the relief that's needed based on individual circumstances, providing a compassionate, warm person to understand what you've been through and where you're going to need to go.
Volunteers make up the workforce of the Red Cross, but it's not just in times of disaster that they're needed.
One of the unique things about disaster is that it's really a cycle. We prepare, we respond, and we recover. And how we look at that is we respond to a disaster, then we recover from a disaster, and then we prepare for the next one. And then we start that cycle all over again. And we need volunteers to help us in every one of those phases.
There's always work to do. We need people to come in, get trained, help us back home so that they're ready when the time comes.
The Red Cross is all of the volunteers in red vests that you see here. We are the American Red Cross. 91% of the workforce of the American Red Cross is volunteers. And we need those volunteers every day in every community.
Whatever our little piece of the puzzle is, whether you do casework or whether you're the person setting up the computers, you have a really important role to play in this whole dance.
And we'll be here as long as we're needed.
In the wake of tragedy, these volunteers stepped up to help those in need. We found out why they're willing to leave their homes and families in support of the relief effort.
What I love about volunteering most is
getting to work with people.
It's the people, the interaction with the people.
It's been exactly what I wanted.
They're just so appreciative.
Thank yous that we get.
You see every side of just the best of us, and it is a really great thing to see.
We get to come out here right where the people are, where the damage is.
Seeing the gratitude in people who have lost everything.
Gratitude that we feel people are thanking us for what we're doing.
You actually do it. You're there, right on top of it.
And there's a position for anyone.
Everybody has something to offer. Every single person who sees your broadcast has something that they can offer to people who are victims of a disaster. Every single person.
Returns on what we do are just so great. To know that we're helping a community.
We are like a family, and it's our family helping your family.
This could be a life-changing experience for you.
There's nothing like it.
If you would like to help in the volunteer effort, go to woodtv.com. Volunteers are still needed. Thank you for joining us.